polluted sky over the hive world fractured not metaphorically, but with raw violence as a wound opened in the fabric of reality. Its edges bled crimson light across the industrial spires and cathedrals of iron, bathing the endless hab blocks in lurid glow. Before we descend into the chaos of this tale, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more legends and dark histories from the Warhammer 40K universe. Sound dampened for a heartbeat, a hush settling over the cacophony below as something fell. Out of that rift descended a figure of fire, a human shape forged in molten energy, wrapped in ribbons of cosmic flame. The atmosphere shuddered with her presence. Down in the underhive, loyal laborers and hardened gangers alike looked up, feeling a weight that was not gravity but destiny itself. Above them all, the hive's towers trembled, lumen strips flickered, and the omnipresent mechanical drones of servo skulls whirred to a halt. Time resumed slower somehow. As she drifted lower, the being of flame did not seem to fight the pull of the world. Her body glowed, hair a corona of burning power that licked at the poisonous air. She did not look around. There was no need to see the ruinous architecture or the thousands of lives below. She sensed everything, the warp taint that clung to stone, the stench of half-forgotten gods, the whispers emanating from the depths. Her fall was not a crash, but a descent chosen. The Pheonix force within her drew energy from this new reality, and she allowed the flames to unfurl like wings. She crossed the boundary between one existence and another, indifferent to the ironclad rules that bound mortal lives. Her landing would be no mere impact crater. It would be the ignition of a saga. In that moment, she was not yet predator or savior, only the embodiment of change. She did not recall how the tear had opened in her previous battle, only the sensation of being pulled by currents beyond space. Those currents now deposited her here, hovering above a world already teetering on the edge of nightmare. The edges of the tear snapped shut behind her like a wound cauterized by plasma, leaving a residue of psionic energy that crackled and arced. Still she descended, entering the atmosphere fully, aware of the thinness of the air and the smell of promethium fumes. The spire's towers rose to greet her, sharp as the talons of forgotten giants. At last her feet touched broken rockcrete in a plaza, scarred by centuries of neglect. The flames around her dimmed to a simmering aura, though her eyes remained as stars. She inhaled, tasting rust and blood. With calm certainty, the first step she took resonated in the bones of the city. From a balcony high on the central spire, an armored figure watched the descent through magnoculars. Plate armor blackened by ash creaked as the Inquisitor leaned forward, heavy gauntlets gripping the stone balustrade. The insignia on his chest, a stylized eye wreathed in a skull, marked him as a servant of the most secretive of the Imperium's orders. His visor enhanced and filtered the glare, presenting data streams and spectral readings. None of the readings made sense. The entity radiated no warp signature known to his ordo, yet crackled with power, rivaling a starship's cannon. Under his breath, the words came steady and low into the vox bead. He requested reinforcements, hazard assessment, and the deployment of a kill team. Static laced the reply. All units were committed elsewhere. The underhive burned with rebellion, cult activities surged like infestation, and the planet's governor had petitioned for Astartes' intervention. It fell to the Inquisition to make sense of anomalies. His mind, honed by centuries of rooting out heresy, considered the possibilities. A demon disguised as a human woman? A rogue psyker of unprecedented might? A long-lost Xeno's weapon? He knew none of the above fit. He felt no malevolent wrongness emanating from her. Yet there was something undeniably foreign, something older than the warp that permeated his world. Faint vibrations trembled through the rockcrete under his boots as her feet touched down. The Inquisitor lowered the magnoculars and signaled for his retinue. Adepts rushed forward, robes whispering. Servo skulls drifted around him, their mechanical eyes whirring, capturing pict feeds for later analysis. His mind recorded every detail, the way the flames around her body seemed to both burn and heal the stone, the way her presence calmed the swarming rats that usually fled light, the way the sky itself seemed to bend around her. He wanted to order the weapons of the spire to fire, to erase this unknown before it could upset carefully maintained balances. Yet something held him back. Years of experience whispered that shooting first often compounded threats. This one might be the lesser of two horrors. With studied composure, he turned from the parapet. The hive beneath him teemed with panicked citizens. Sirens wailed, fires crackled, and in the deeper shadows, whispers rose. Cultists would interpret this omen to their advantage. He needed answers, and quickly. As he strode towards the strategium, he issued orders to dispatch acolytes to monitor the entity's movements. He could not yet know that his decision to observe, rather than destroy, would reverberate through the fabric of the Imperium. For now he moved like a man burdened by the weight of 1,000,000 souls. The glow of the tear still shimmered in his peripheral vision, an after-image that would haunt his dreams. The mysterious figure below had become a fulcrum around which fate would turn. The woman of fire stood alone amid the ruins, yet she felt far from alone. The Pheonix force within her thrummed with energy drawn from this new realm. Sensations flooded her. The cold hardness of rockcrete contrasted with the searing heat she generated. The breeze carried particles of ash and the metallic tang of spilled coolant from ruptured pipes. In the distance, the deep groan of machines performing their endless labors echoed like chants. She turned her head slowly, absorbing the desolation. It reminded her of other worlds where humanity had reached too far and fallen back in pieces. In those memories, she had been both destroyer and redeemer. A faint tremor ran through her chest, not of fear, but of recognition. This was not her Earth. Yet the same weaknesses were present: greed, corruption, cult worship. She sensed minds in the nearby hablocks, thousands of them, each lit like a candle against the dark. They flared with fear as they beheld her, their thoughts scattering. She took no pleasure in that fear. Her power had seldom brought comfort to those around her. To some she was salvation, to others doom. The force inside her hungered always, tempting her to unleash cleansing fire upon a corrupt galaxy. Her mortal mind resisted, tethered by memories of humanity, of love, of lessons learned at great cost. The conflict within was old as creation. As she considered the path ahead, a new presence brushed her senses. Not human, not warp, but a different form of void. It whispered of infinite hunger and endless war. It came from the ground, from the walls, from the air itself. Here they called it the warp, a dimension of thought and madness. The Pheonix force in her recognized a rival energy, one that sought to bend souls to its will. It recoiled as if offended. She felt its tendrils probe her aura, testing, tasting. With calm certainty, she reinforced her psychic shields. Golden fire brightened around her hands, not as an attack, but as an assertion of identity. She would not be corrupted again. She would not allow an alien power to claim her mind. In her past, she had succumbed to cosmic hunger and burned worlds to ash. She would not repeat that here. Her eyes narrowed in determination. She would cut out the rot she felt, excise it with flame, protect those who could be protected. The path forward unrolled before her like a tapestry woven of battle and sorrow. She took a second step, the fires around her casting elongated shadows across the plaza. Somewhere in the distance a deep horn sounded. The world moved. She began to move with it. Beneath the Hab spire's broken archways, figures emerged from smoke and ruin. They moved with an unnatural unity, their bodies swaying in time with unheard music. Their attire was a patchwork of scavenged robes, chains, and industrial equipment repurposed into weapons. Rusted axes, hydraulic claws, and serrated blades glittered faintly in the firelight. Sigils carved into their flesh oozed black ichor. The words they chanted under their breath, blood, skulls, throne, carried across the plaza like the sound of a furnace. Drawn by the promise of power, they came toward the blazing woman. She felt their minds long before she saw them. Each one burned with fanaticism, an ember stoked by whispers from beyond. They did not fear her. They desired her. Some thought to worship, others to sacrifice. None considered the possibility of their own annihilation. They encircled the crater she had made, leaving a wide ring of cracked stone between themselves and her. The flames that clung to her darkened, coiling inward, waiting. The cult leader stepped forward, a man once handsome, now gaunt, his eyes sunken but bright with madness. He raised a serrated blade and brought it down across his palm, smearing his blood onto his forehead in a crude symbol. He began to speak, his voice thick with reverence and derangement. His words of welcome and entreaty bled into the narrating voice in her head. He called her a messenger of their god, a sign of the blood tide to come. He offered skulls in exchange for favor. Those around him echoed the vow with feverish delight. Under his breath, the words came steady and low, yet his intention was anything but calm. She listened without answering. The force within her stirred, disdainful of their ignorance. They called upon the blood god, yet they stood before the manifestation of a different cosmic fire. They mistook her for an ally in slaughter. The Pheonix force found the notion almost amusing. Without warning, she raised her hands. The flames around her flared outward, sweeping in a semicircle. They moved not like wildfire, but like a sculptor's chisel, choosing targets with brutal precision. Those nearest the ark were reduced to ash in an instant, their chants ending in a gasp. Those on the edges were hurled backward, their crude weapons melted. The leader attempted to rush forward, arms outstretched, but a telekinetic wave lifted him from the ground and slammed him into a shattered pillar. The rest broke, some screaming in anger, others in awe, all in pain. She turned slowly, ensuring no ambusher lingered behind her. The heavy smell of scorched flesh filled the air. The flames withdrew again to a controlled aura. She inhaled through flared nostrils, feeling the Pheonix within surge in satisfaction, then receding. It was always hungry for destruction. She would feed it only what needed to burn. Around her, silence fell. Ash drifted down like snow. She knew more would come. The burst of power would be felt far and wide by those attuned to such things. The war for this world had noticed her. Deep within the spire, red hololithic light bathed the face of the Inquisitor as he stood before a tactical display. Data streams flickered, showing swirling warp fluctuations across the hive, cult gatherings like tumorous growths, and a single new marker, the locus of a psychic event of unprecedented magnitude. Servitors clattered as they fed him reports. Adepts whispered prayers to the machine god as they recalibrated sensors to make sense of reading. The Inquisitor listened as an astropath relayed a message from orbit. The governor's pleas for assistance had reached a Death Watch vessel. The Emperor's angels were inbound. He felt both relief and concern. A kill team of Astartes brought unmatched firepower, but they also represented a blunt instrument. The entity below was not yet proven hostile to the Imperium. It had incinerated cultists with surgical precision, actions which in another context might be called heroic. Yet the symbol glimpsed on its chest by servo-skull pick captures, a stylized bird of fire, did not match any imperial heraldry. In his mind, suspicion warred with pragmatism. He ordered vox links open to all precincts, instructing arbitraries to withdraw from the impact zone. He relayed orders to Mechanicus engine seers to monitor the entity's psychic output. He sent a coded message to the incoming Death Watch. Caution, observe, capture if possible. As he spoke, he felt the weight of centuries of precedent pressing upon him. The Inquisition existed to root out threats to sever any limb infected by heresy. Yet sometimes, as ancient archives told, it found allies in unexpected places. His jaw clenched. He was not one for hope, yet he would rather test this fiery anomaly than give the order for exterminatus. Under his breath, the words came steady and low as he invoked the Emperor for guidance. He would watch for any sign of deception. Should the being turn its fire upon loyal citizens or reveal allegiance to any warp entity, he would call down orbit-to-surface bombardment without hesitation. For now he tempered his zeal with caution, a rare act for one of his rank. The glow of the tactical display illuminated the lines of exhaustion on his face. He knew the cultists would interpret the creature's arrival as auspicious. He knew whispers would travel faster than his orders. He knew the warp rift that had birthed the Pheonix might signal an escalation of the cult's ritual. Time was thin. He tapped a rune on the console, opening a private channel to his personal acolyte. The command was simple: gather records of beings clad in fire. If any precedent existed, he would need it. As he waited for the kill team's reply, he allowed his thoughts to drift briefly to memories of other worlds saved and lost. The pattern of events here felt both familiar and dreadfully new. The Emperor demanded vigilance. He would deliver it. On the Death Watch strike cruiser in low orbit, black-armored giants assembled in the strategium. Light from hololithic projectors cast eerie glows across polished ceramite. Brother Captain Daemon, a veteran of countless Xenos purges, stood at the center of a circular table. His silver-left pauldron bore the Inquisition's seal, signifying his temporary allegiance to the Ordo Xenos. Around him stood warriors from different chapters, a stoic ultramarine with a bolt gun as large as a mortal man, a Blood Angel assault specialist with lightning claws, an Iron Hands tech marine whose augmetic limbs whirred softly, a Raven Guard recon expert whose armor's cowl seemed to absorb light. Each had been selected for expertise in confronting the unknown. Daemon played back footage of the fiery entity incinerating cultists. The room fell quiet save for the humming of machinery. No one spoke of fear. Fear was an emotion left behind when one became an Astartes. Instead, they analyzed the way she directed her energy with thought rather than movement, the absence of warp taint in the Auspex readings, the lack of physical armor, yet the apparent resilience to harm. The ultramarine, Brother Varen, spoke first, his voice measured. He noted that the entity had eliminated enemies of the Emperor, but that alone did not absolve it of suspicion. The Blood Angel, Brother Cassiel, felt a stirring of the red thirst as he watched the flames. He suppressed it with discipline, reminding himself that indiscriminate wrath served only the enemy. The Iron Hands tech marine, Brother Cyrax, reported that the energy discharge recorded could disrupt power armor's machine spirits. The Raven Guard, Brother Kirath, said little. His eyes analyzed angles and shadows, thinking ahead to how one might ambush such a foe. Daemon listened to them all and then spoke with calm certainty. Orders from Inquisitor Varnus were to capture if possible, terminate if necessary. The kill team would deploy via drop pod to the impact site, observe the entity, test its capabilities, and if it resisted, engage with extreme prejudice. He reminded them that the Emperor's will was manifest in their actions. They would be his hand. They clasped forearms in ritual affirmation. Then they knelt and prayed, with soft humility, though none thought their cause anything but righteous. The strategium's doors opened, and they moved toward the armory to don their personalized war gear. Each knew that by the time their drop pod doors blew open into the underhive, the situation would have changed again. They embraced that chaos. Astartes thrived in the storm. The Pheonix moved deeper into the hive, guided by instinct and by a sense of wrongness, pulsing like a beacon. The narrow corridors and towering galleries of the underhive pressed in, iron and rockcrete forming a maze lit by sputtering lumen strips. Rusted pipes ran along walls like veins, dripping chemicals into rivulets that pooled and evaporated, leaving crystalline residues. She stepped lightly, yet each footfall reverberated. Her presence warped the air, causing shadows to dance when she passed. Rats and scavenger creatures darted from her path, sensing the danger of raw cosmic power. Graffiti covered the walls, warnings in low Gothic, profane symbols of blood cults, desperate pleas for salvation carved by trembling hands. She followed the current of warp corruption deeper. The Pheonix force guided her like a compass toward concentrated evil. The path led past abandoned manufactorum bays where broken servitors lay rusting. It led through hab units where she glimpsed gaunt faces peeking from behind makeshift barricades. In their eyes she saw terror and hope intermingled. Some knelt as she passed, mumbling prayers not to her, but to the Emperor. Others turned away, expecting retribution. She spared them. They were victims, not threats. Their fear of fire was natural when one lived in a tinderbox. Pushing deeper, she encountered the first of the warp-spawned abominations. It dropped from a ventilation shaft without warning, a twisting mass of sinew and bone that might once have been a man. Its limbs bent at unnatural angles. Its mouth gaped impossibly wide, lined with teeth like shards of obsidian. It rushed at her, eyes wild. She did not waste a breath. A flick of her hand sent a lance of telekinetic force through its chest. It crumpled, dissolving into ichor that hissed on the floor. More followed, creatures that had never been human, crawling from the dark like nightmares given form. She dispatched them without mercy. Each kill fed the fire within. Each restraint she exercised kept her humanity intact. She could unleash a storm that would incinerate entire levels of the hive, but she chose precision. Her senses extended, reading the labyrinth like open scripture. Warp energy flowed like current, thicker ahead. She moved with increasing speed, her cloak of fire trailing like a comet's tail, swirling around pipes and cables without singeing them. Underfoot the metal grates hummed. From distant rooms came chants and the low hum of machinery. She knew she was closing on a focal point. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, exhaling fetid air. In the darkness ahead, she sensed not just mindless beasts, but organized resistance. Cultists had posted sentries, expecting enemies from the Imperium, not a demigoddess of fire. They would soon learn their miscalculation. She paused at a junction, hearing the clanking of armored boots somewhere above. Another force was descending. Her lip curled into something akin to a smile. Allies or adversaries, they would arrive soon. Her journey and theirs would converge. As she navigated the labyrinth, memories surfaced, unbidden and vivid, echoes of simpler times when she had been a girl learning to control a power that terrified her, voices of mentors telling her to trust her instincts, faces of those she had loved and lost. These memories flickered in the flames around her like ghosts. They grounded her in ways this cold iron world could not. She remembered standing under a different sky, blue and endless, feeling warmth without pollution. She remembered laughter, something rare in the depths of a hive. She remembered the moment she first felt the Pheonix force swell within, a moment of transcendence and terror. That cosmic force had burned worlds under her direction when she was lost to its hunger. It had also resurrected her, teaching her that death was not always final. Those dualities defined her, destroyer and savior, human and cosmic, bound and free. Here, in this realm of endless war, she felt the Pheonix force resonate with the warp and yet remain distinct. The warp was raw emotion and thought given form. The Pheonix force was creation and destruction in one. They clashed and danced inside her like storm fronts meeting. The temptation whispered again to cleanse this hive, this planet, this galaxy with purifying flame and start anew. She could do it. She had done worse. The force within made her feel every struggling life as if it were her own heartbeat. Each cry echoed through her mind. Each act of cruelty burned like acid. She could end those sufferings in one glorious conflagration. But then she remembered gentle hands and quiet guidance, the voice of one who had taught her that power was not licensed to decide the fate of millions lightly. That voice did not belong to any man here. It belonged to another life. She heard it as if through water, telling her that restraint was strength. With calm certainty, she chose to honor that voice. She would use fire as a scalpel, not a bomb. She would burn away disease without killing the host. Memories of her own mistakes sharpened her resolve. She would not become the villain they accused her of being. She would carve a different path through this nightmare. The corridor opened into a wider chamber. A torn banner hung above, emblazoned with symbols she did not yet recognize. Her flames flared as she read the warp-etched script, understanding it instinctively. It spoke of blood and the ascension of a champion. She knew she was close. Her memories faded, replaced by cold focus. The chamber she entered was vast, a former refinery repurposed into a temple of slaughter. Gigantic vats that once held promethium now brimmed with blood. Chains hung from the ceiling, suspending flayed skins and skulls. At the far end, a raised dais held a throne of rusted metal and bone. Upon it sat a creature that may once have been human, but now bore little resemblance. Brass armor fused with red flesh bulged with muscle. Horns curved from a helmet fashioned from a skull. Eyes burned with an inner fire that was not his own. Around him, robed cultists swayed in rhythm, chanting invocations that made the very air vibrate. The sorcerer beside the throne traced symbols in the air, his staff's crystal glowing with malevolent light. Together they channeled power into a glowing sigil on the floor, a portal that swirled with crimson and black energy. The Pheonix recognized the design from another life. It was a tear in reality, a gate for entities from beyond. The champion raised an axe the size of a car door. Jagged teeth along its edge spun, thirsting for flesh. He spoke not as a man, but as a vessel. He called her intruder, interloper, challenge. His voice boomed against the walls without the need for vox amplification. The cultists' chanting rose. The portal pulsed. She stepped forward, not in deference but in challenge. Flames coiled around her arms. Her eyes met the champion's, burning orange to his ember red. The Pheonix force within her flared, sensing a worthy foe. This was no mindless beast. This was a man willingly remade into a monster by his devotion to the blood god. He would not be swayed by reason or fear. He lunged with surprising speed for something so massive, chain axe roaring. The swing carved through the air, sending droplets of gore flying from its teeth. She slid to one side, the heat of her body causing the arc to miss by a handspan. Her counterattack was a telekinetic blow that would have crushed a tank. It staggered him, but he did not fall. He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Blood dripped from his lips. He swung again, and again, relentless as a piston. Each impact of axe against floor or pillar sent tremors through the chamber. She met his ferocity with grace and feral power, leaping, twisting, burning. The sorcerer shrieked in anger at the interruption and hurled bolts of warped lightning toward her. Some she deflected with a sweep of her arm. Others danced harmlessly along her aura, their corruption unable to find purchase. Cultists rushed forward, weapons raised, hoping to swarm her. She ignored them, focusing on the champion. He was the conduit. Break him and the ritual faltered. Fire blazed brighter with each exchange. Sparks rained upon the chanting cultists, setting robes alight. They screamed, yet continued chanting, their devotion absolute. The Pheonix felt the weight of their madness pressing against her mind. She pressed back, whispering in her own way to the Pheonix force, channeling its destructive potential. The duel raged, each blow sending shockwaves through the temple. Somewhere above, heavy footsteps echoed on metal catwalks. Others approached. The tide of battle was about to swell. The ceiling above the temple chamber shook, showering rust and dust onto the combatants. A moment later, adamantium slammed into rockcrete as a drop pod tore through layers of the hive and embedded itself into the temple wall. Explosive bolts fired, the hatch blew outward, and black-armored giants strode into hell. 5 Astartes in Deathwatch livery fanned out, bolters raised, targeting optics flaring crimson as they assessed the battlefield. Their presence was like a clarion call. Their minds were honed by genetic enhancement and indoctrination. Their bodies were living weapons. The Pheonix sensed their psychic signatures like cold stars, bright, controlled, utterly human, yet elevated. They saw her at the same instant she saw them. No words were needed. Duty compelled them forward. Bolters roared, spewing mass reactive shells the size of a man's finger. She moved with impossible speed, swirling fire acting as both shield and counterforce. Bolts struck the molten aura, exploding harmlessly as their machine spirits died in confusion. She returned fire not with bullets, but with telekinetic force and concentrated flame, aiming between the armored giants so as to avoid lethal strikes. She did not want them dead. They were not her enemy. They thought otherwise. The ultramarine advanced, firing controlled bursts while shouting orders into the kill team's vox. The Blood Angel ignited his jump pack, lurching into the air, lightning claws crackling with energy. The Iron Hands Tech Marine triggered servo arms bristling from his pack, launching grapnels to anchor himself. The Raven Guard vanished into shadows, seeking a flanking route. The captain drew a power sword that shimmered with disruptive energy and moved toward her with deliberate strides. She parried bolts with gestures, each motion leaving trails of light. She danced backward, giving ground without ceding advantage. She called out to them in the only way she could, projecting a thought into the nearest Astartes' mind. "Stand down." Not an order, but a plea. The ultramarine flinched, momentarily staggered by the intrusion. He regained control and barked an order to ignore psychic assault. They charged. The Blood Angel reached her first, lightning claws slashing at her midsection. Her aura held, though the claws left trails of embers. She twisted, grabbing the assault marine's wrist. Without harming him, she hurled him aside into a pile of cultists, disrupting their chant. The captain's power sword swept toward her head. She ducked, feeling hair singe as the blade passed. She struck with an open palm against his chest plate, sending him sliding back. He compensated with cat-like grace, carving a cautionary arc in the air to keep distance. The duel between cosmic fire and gene-wrought muscle filled the chamber with kinetic poetry. At one edge, the mutated champion bellowed in fury at being ignored, rising and charging toward both her and the Astartes indiscriminately. The sorcerer shrieked a curse and redoubled his efforts to stabilize the portal. The ritual circle pulsed faster. Blood overflowed the vats. The warp bled into reality. The Deathwatch found themselves between 2 titans of power, while the true enemy began to manifest behind them. Under his breath, the captain's prayer to the Emperor was a steady thread. He made a decision then that would shape the battle. He switched to the Vox open channel. With calm certainty, he called for a temporary ceasefire to focus on the ritual. The Pheonix heard and understood. They had seconds to act. She nodded, a small human gesture, and turned her fury fully upon the cultists and their leaders. Amid the chaos, the Pheonix felt something unexpected, the brush of human thoughts not driven by fanaticism or orders, but by awe. A young underhiver, hiding in a broken vent, watched the battle with wide eyes. In his mind flickered images of tales told by his grandmother of angels descending to save the faithful. He whispered words meant for the Emperor, but directed at her, believing for a heartbeat that she was divine. In another corner, an older woman clutching a child pressed her forehead to the floor, praying that the flames would spare them. Through their minds, she saw glimpses of lives lived in the shadows of megastructures, simple joys, relentless toil, dreams crushed under the heel of tyranny. Those memories struck her harder than any bolter shell. They reminded her why she fought, not for glory or cosmic balance, but for people like these who survived between the gears of unimaginable machines. She sensed the thoughts of the Astartes as well. They were warriors through and through, minds disciplined to a knife's edge, yet within each burned a spark of honor. The Ultramarines' thoughts held a litany of tactical calculations, overlaid with quotes from a codex. The Blood Angel battled an inner thirst for blood, even as he fought with controlled fury. The captain weighed orders against observations, loyalty against logic. The Iron Hands Tech Marine communed with his implants, singing binary hymns that soothed machine spirits. The Raven Guard moved like a whisper, his mind a shadow. None of them hated her. They simply could not trust her. That reality did not sting. Trust had to be earned, not demanded. In the heat of battle, she opened herself to their perceptions. They saw her as a being of fire and destruction. She allowed them a glimpse of her humanity, a flash of her face without flames, eyes filled with sorrow for the lives around them. She hoped, perhaps foolishly, that it would lessen their fear. Even as she reached out, she felt the Pheonix force surge. The ritual circle pulsed, drawing warp energies to a climax. The sorcerer chanted with renewed fervor. The mutated champion, enraged by being sidelined, roared and threw himself back into the fray. She refocused, letting the echoes of humanity strengthen her resolve. She would protect these people and these warriors, even if they did not know they needed protection. The enemy here was the ritual that threatened to tear a hole between realities. Everything else was a distraction. She drew a deep breath, though she did not need air. The next moments would decide the fate of this hive. At the center of the refinery temple, the sorcerer worked furiously. His staff traced patterns in the air, drawing filaments of warp energy down into the swirling portal. Words older than this galaxy spilled from his lips. The Pheonix felt the fabric of reality tremble. The sigil on the floor glowed brighter, lines of blood transforming into veins of liquid light. The vats bubbled, thick crimson foam spilling over. The air smelled of copper and ozone. The sorcerer's mind was a maelstrom of ambition and fear. He had seen visions of his ascension to daemonhood, of leading legions in the name of the blood god. He also felt the weight of his master's expectations. Failure would mean oblivion. He saw the Pheonix as a harbinger, a test from his god. If he could bind her or feed her to the portal, his glory would be assured. He directed a coil of warp lightning at her again, hoping to snare her will. It met her aura and diffused, turning into harmless sparks that flickered out. He snarled, frustration bleeding through his chants. He pushed more power into the portal, trying to force it open quickly. The mutated champion, though wounded, sensed the urgency. He abandoned his duel with her and moved to guard the sorcerer, interposing his bulk between her and the ritual. The portal's edge began to distort, bulging outward. Through it, shadowy forms pressed, eager to break through. The Pheonix recognized the shapes, towering silhouettes with horns and claws, shimmering in and out of phase. They pounded against the barrier between worlds, causing ripples that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Every heartbeat the tear widened. She knew what would happen if it opened fully. Demons would pour through, turning the underhive into a slaughterhouse. The blood spilled here was both the key and the bait. The warp fed on emotion. The cult had provided it in abundance. Under his breath, the sorcerer whispered a final word of power. A pulse surged outward, knocking cultists and Astartes alike off balance. The floor cracked. Chains snapped. Stones fell. The Pheonix steadied herself, focusing on the portal. She could feel the connection between the sigils and the tear, like cords under tension. If she cut them, she might collapse the structure. But to do so would require precision and the cooperation of the Astartes to keep the cultists and champion from interfering. The captain seemed to understand. He shouted to his brothers to form a perimeter. They responded instantly, firing at any cultist that moved toward them. The Blood Angel leapt to intercept the champion. Bolter shells and green flames lit the scene. The sorcerer continued to chant, blood streaming from his nose. His will was iron hard, his devotion unyielding. He would hold the portal open until his dying breath. She admired his resolve, even as she prepared to extinguish it. Her hands came up, palms facing the floor. Lines of force extended from her fingertips, connecting to the glowing sigils. She drew her power inward, preparing to sever the lines, ignoring the pain of raw warp energy burning around her. Her soul sang with purpose. It was time to end the ritual. Energy thrummed through the chamber as the Pheonix began her work. She closed her eyes, not to shut out the chaos, but to see more clearly the webs of power connecting everything. In her mind's eye, the ritual circle became a network of burning threads stretching from the blood vats to the portal, and from the portal to the minds of the chanting cultists. At each intersection, a knot of will tied the warp to real space. She reached out and grasped one thread. Her touch burned it away in an instant, sending a ripple of destabilization through the circle. The glow dimmed slightly and the portal convulsed. The sorcerer howled, feeling his control slip. He poured more of himself into the ritual, veins in his forehead bulging. The champion roared and hurled himself at the Blood Angel, lightning claws meeting chain axe in a shower of sparks and gore. Each Astartes fought like a demigod, absorbing blows that would have obliterated lesser beings. Behind them, the iron-hand tech marine extended a mechadendrite, slicing through chanting cultists with surgical precision. The Raven Guard sniped from the shadows, picking off sorceress apprentices aiming spells at the Pheonix. The Ultramarine fired short, controlled bursts into the horde, conserving ammo for a sustained fight. The captain moved with purpose, his power sword humming as he carved through those who got too close to the psyker in their midst. Through it all, the Pheonix wove. With calm certainty, she cut another thread. The portal's crimson surface flickered, showing glimpses of starless void beyond. The demons pressed harder, scenting vulnerability. The sorcerer screamed a plea to his god, offering his life in exchange for strength. He raised his staff and directed all his power at the Pheonix. A bolt of concentrated warp energy shot toward her chest. She did not dodge. She could not without losing focus. The bolt struck her aura and burned. Pain seared through her mind like ice. The Pheonix force within flared in anger, seeking to lash out indiscriminately. She held it firm, channeling the pain into her next cut. Sweat beaded on her brow, then evaporated in the heat. Her hair whipped around her face, flames roaring louder. The floor beneath her feet began to fracture. One more thread severed. The portal shrank. The demons beyond screeched in frustration. The sorcerer fell to his knees, exhaustion and blood loss overtaking him. His staff cracked. The circle dimmed further. The mutated champion, sensing his master weakening, roared in rage and pushed past the Blood Angel, swinging his axe at her. The captain intercepted, his power sword meeting chain teeth. Sparks lit their faces as they struggled. The Pheonix cut the final thread. The portal imploded. Where crimson had glowed, now only empty air remained. A shock wave erupted from the center, throwing everyone backward. She stumbled, regaining her balance with fire. The champion staggered, confusion in his bestial eyes. The sorcerer collapsed entirely, lifeless. For a heartbeat there was stillness. Then the screaming began, not of demons, but of humans realizing their god's promise had failed. The Pheonix opened her eyes, letting the threads fade. She saw the Astartes regaining their feet. She saw cultists either fleeing or rushing to kill in despair. She saw the champion draw a breath, resolve firming despite the ritual's failure. The fight was not over, but the portal was closed. A surge of relief mingled with exhaustion washed through her. She allowed herself one heartbeat of satisfaction. Then she prepared to fight again. The mutated champion roared, his voice reverberating like thunder. Without the ritual, his chance at ascension evaporated. Rage was all that remained. He turned it upon her. He swung the chain axe overhead in a brutal arc, aimed not at her body but at her head, seeking to separate mind from shoulders. She raised her arm, catching the haft with both hands. Metal met flame hissing. The impact sent vibrations through her bones. He bore down with all his weight. Muscles knotted. Veins bulged. She felt his breath, a fetid gust of promethium and blood, on her face. Her eyes met his through the slits of his skull helm. Red met gold. For an instant they were simply two beings locked in a contest of will. The champion's mind was a furnace of violence, simple and pure. He did not fear death. He desired it if it came with the promise of pleasing his god. The Pheonix recognized that fervor. She had encountered it across galaxies in those who surrendered themselves to higher powers. She pitied him. She also respected the strength. She shifted her stance, stepping to the side, letting the axe slide past her and bury itself in the stone. The champion overbalanced. She seized his exposed side, channeling flame and telekinesis into a blast that hurled him across the chamber. He smashed into a vat of blood, cracking it. Crimson liquid cascaded over him, hissing as it touched his armor. He rose, drenched, eyes blazing. He charged again. This time she did not wait. She met him halfway, using the Pheonix force to accelerate. She struck his helmet with a flaming fist. The impact echoed like a bell. Hairline cracks formed around the horns. He responded with a backhand that clipped her shoulder, sending sparks spraying. She rotated with the blow, pivoting to plant a kick into his knee. It buckled. He stumbled. Her hand shot out, fingers splaying. Telekinetic energy clamped around his throat. She lifted him. Massive as he was, he hung in the air like a rag doll. He clawed at his neck, chainsaw teeth still grinding. She could have snapped his spine. Instead, she hesitated. In that heartbeat, the blood angel struck, lightning claws slashing through tendon and bone, severing the champion's weapon arm. The limb fell, still gripping the axe, chain teeth spinning uselessly. The champion roared, blood spraying. He tried to bite the marine's head. The captain moved in, power sword flashing, slicing through mutated muscle. They fought together now, not as enemies, but as allies of convenience. The Pheonix hurled the champion into the air and unleashed a focused beam of fire that cut through his torso. He split apart, ichor raining. His head hit the ground and rolled to a stop. Silence fell again, broken only by the crackling of flames and the ragged breathing of survivors. The massive body quivered, then lay still. His death sent a pulse through the warp. Somewhere, the blood god took note. The Pheonix let her arms fall. She looked around. The Astartes ringed her, weapons lowered but not holstered. Cultists lay dead or fled. The sorcerer's corpse smoked. Blood pooled on the stone. The portal was gone. Yet she felt no triumph, only fatigue and the distant call of the force that inhabited her. She sensed it urging her to move on, to find the next wound in reality and cauterize it. She would soon heed it. First, she had to face those she had just fought beside. After the champion's fall, the kill team tightened its formation. Brother Captain Naaman stepped forward, power sword held at ease but ready. His helmeted gaze met her glowing eyes. She sensed a mix of suspicion and grudging respect in him. His thoughts were a shield wall. She respected that. Under his breath, he uttered a prayer to the Emperor. When he spoke aloud, his words blended with the narration. He asked her purpose. The question hung between them like smoke. She heard the demand behind it, explain yourself or be judged. She weighed silence against honesty. Silence would be taken as defiance. Honesty was complicated. How could she explain she was an avatar of a cosmic force older than this galaxy, that she had once been a mortal woman who died and lived many times, that she wandered through realities, closing wounds made by malevolent gods? Simple language would not suffice. Her lips moved anyway. She told him she was here to stop the breach. She told him she had no interest in the Imperium's wars. She told him there were worse things than her. No quotation marks marked her speech. Her thoughts flowed into narration. The captain listened. He did not lower his weapon. Brother Varen reported that Auspex scans showed no warp taint on her. Brother Cyrax noted that her energy signature did not match any Xeno's technology. Brother Cassiel shifted his weight, ready for violence if necessary. Brother Kyrath remained unseen, his presence a silent question mark. Naaman considered. His duty was clear, capture or kill unknown entities. His mind, however, acknowledged that without her, the portal would have opened. The Emperor's plan was inscrutable. Sometimes his angels were aided by things beyond understanding. He chose compromise. He told her that if she would submit to examination, perhaps she could be allowed to leave. Even as he spoke, a new presence touched all minds in the chamber. It felt like a cool breeze after fire, a warp signature not of blood or disease, but of order. The Pheonix recognized it as the Inquisitor who had watched her descent. He broadcast a message through Vox. Stand down. He had seen enough. He would not order her destruction. He demanded she leave his world. The captain relayed the command. She nodded. Fate had other plans. As she turned, a tremor shook the ground. Behind her, at the far end of the chamber, a new rift blossomed. This one glowed emerald, not crimson. It pulsed with a frequency her soul knew intimately. The fortress that birthed the Pheonix Force had found her again. A doorway back to her eternal crusade opened, framed by shimmering light. She felt the pull. The Astartes raised their weapons reflexively. Naaman barked an order, "Hold fire." He understood that this was not of the warp. She felt gratitude toward him. She stepped toward the light. The call in her blood intensified. She glanced once more at the warriors, the underhivers, the corpses of cultists. She hoped they would remember what had truly threatened them. She stepped into the vortex. Emerald light enveloped her as she crossed the threshold. The weight of this reality lifted from her shoulders. Behind her, she heard bolter bolts clatter to the stone as they passed through empty air. For a heartbeat, she was suspended between dimensions. She saw the hive world as a patchwork of light and dark, threads of fate stretching out like a web. She saw the Astartes leaving the chamber, their minds already turning to reports and debriefings. She saw the Inquisitor in his strategium, head bowed as he recorded his account. She saw the cult's remaining shrines dimming. She saw the warp receding like a tide, thwarted here but surging elsewhere. She reached out, not physically, but with essence, and severed any lingering connection between her power and this place. She would not leave behind stray embers that could ignite new cults. The Pheonix Force within her sang in resonance with the vortex. It was eager to return to the multiverse, to continue its endless cycle of destruction and rebirth. She allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had saved lives here. That mattered. Perhaps the Emperor she had heard invoked was not unlike the cosmic forces she had encountered. Perhaps his servants were misguided but brave. In this moment between worlds, she forgave them their suspicion. She forgave herself her flame. The emerald light thickened, enfolding her like silk. It carried with it the scent of ozone and rain on stone, a welcome contrast to the iron tang of the hive. She breathed it in, feeling renewed. She did not know where she would emerge next. The Pheonix Force did not move linearly through realities. It followed need. She would go where tears in the fabric called her, where rituals like the one she had just halted threatened to unleash horrors. She would be both sword and shield. Her last thought of this world was of the little boy who had seen her and thought her an angel. For his sake and others like him, she hoped the Inquisition would show mercy. The vortex contracted. The chamber on the hive world faded. Her body dissolved into light. In another heartbeat, she was gone, and the hive returned to darkness, lit only by burning pools of blood and the red lenses of Astartes' helmets. Elsewhere, the Inquisitor watched his hololithic feed flicker as the emerald vortex closed. In that last image, he saw the fiery woman's features soften into something almost human. He noted the absence of warp distortion. He heard in his vox the acknowledgement from the Death Watch captain that the entity had departed. He exhaled slowly. His duty now was to report and to guard against the inevitable repercussions. He turned from the display and walked toward a shrine in his private chamber. He knelt, placing his hands upon the skull of a martyr, and whispered a prayer. He did not ask for vengeance or power. He asked for wisdom. His world had been saved by something outside his doctrine. That was difficult to reconcile, yet he could not deny what he had witnessed. Under his breath, the words came steady and low. Gratitude, caution, vigilance. He ordered his acolytes to purge any remaining cult sites and to double watch on psychers. He ordered the Mechanicus to study residual energies. He requested that the Death Watch remain in system until he was sure no new breach would open. He considered sending a report directly to the High Lords of Terror, but he knew such a report might be classified forever. He chose to send it to his own Ordo, trusting his peers to weigh the implications. He did not know that his message would be sealed, marked for only the most senior Inquisitors. He did not know that the symbol of the Pheonix would be interpreted and debated by scholars who would argue whether it represented a new threat or an unexpected ally. He did know that stories would spread among the underhive. Some would say an angel of fire had saved them. Others would say a demon had devoured their enemies. The truth, as always, would blur into myth. As he stood, he felt the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. This was not the first time his faith had been tested. It would not be the last. He walked to his desk and began to write his report. His quill scratched across parchment in precise strokes. He wrote of crimson rifts and emerald vortexes, of cultists consumed by holy fire, of a woman who was more than human. He left out no detail. He knew that the Emperor expected truth above all. Outside his chamber, the hive continued to burn in places. Sirens wailed, people screamed, and Arbites enforced order with iron fists. Life in the Imperium was never simple. It was, however, guarded. He would ensure that remained true. On another plane, freed from the constraints of rockcrete and steel, the Pheonix shot through a tunnel of stars. Colors not found in any physical spectrum streaked past. She felt the Pheonix force rejoice, reveling in motion, in the thrill of possibility. She allowed herself to revel as well. Out here, in the void between realities, she was unbound by gravity or politics. She was pure energy and will. She remembered the faces she had seen in the hive, the Inquisitor, the Astartes, the little boy, the Cultists. They flickered across her consciousness and then were gone, like embers carried away on a breeze. She thought of the blood god whose name had been invoked so many times. She thought of other gods she had fought, gods of death, pestilence, deception, and hunger. They all drew strength from mortal worship. The Pheonix force was different. It existed regardless of belief, feeding on the cycle of life and death. In that, perhaps, it was more akin to the Emperor's perpetual nature than to the warp's fickle powers. She felt no kinship to any of them. She was what she was. She thought of the Astartes. Their courage had been undeniable. Their willingness to fight beside her, however brief, had been admirable. She hoped they survived the bureaucratic repercussions of showing restraint in the face of an unorthodox ally. She hoped the Iron Hands Tech Marine had recorded useful data. The Ultramarine had new lines for his codex. The Blood Angel had sated his thirst with righteous battle. The Raven Guard had new stories for his watch fortress. She hoped the captain would remember her as something other than a threat. As the tunnel opened into another reality, the Pheonix let go of hope. Hope was for mortals. Her purpose lay in action. A new world unfolded ahead. She felt a tug in that direction, the telltale signature of another ritual gone awry. She oriented herself, letting the Pheonix force guide. Her thoughts quieted. Her flames brightened. She accelerated, a comet between stars, an omen of fire. The memory of the hive world faded behind her like a dream. Ahead, war beckoned. She answered. Back in the hive, days turned into weeks. The fires were extinguished, the dead were catalogued, and production resumed under watchful eyes. The cult was dismantled with brutal efficiency. Those suspected of association were interrogated, some executed, others consigned to penal legions. The Inquisitor's report travelled through secure channels, reaching the desks of high-ranking members of his order. In hidden chambers on Terra, robed figures read of a fiery woman who closed a warp portal without recourse to sanctioned rituals. They debated, voices a whisper. Some argued she was a demon in disguise, her actions a ploy to gain trust. Others suggested she could be a weapon against the ruinous powers. The Lord Inquisitor listened without revealing his opinion. He knew the galaxy was large, and the Emperor's enemies were myriad. Perhaps there was room in his plan for a being of cosmic fire. He sealed the report, marking it for restricted eyes. He sent a message to the Death Watch praising their restraint. He ordered that the symbol of the Firebird be added to the Ordo archives with annotations. He filed the matter under anomalies. On the hive world, the little boy who had watched the battle grew into a teenager who told tales of the Angel of Fire. Sometimes he told the tale to avoid being robbed, other times to comfort a crying child. Each telling changed details. The angel's eyes became blue, then green, then gold. The monster she fought became bigger. The Astartes grew to number 1020. Stories mutated like genes, shaped by need. The truth remained in the Inquisition's sealed vaults. The Astartes returned to their duties. The captain gave his report. He mentioned the woman only briefly, focusing instead on the cult's eradication. He received no reprimand. He did, however, receive a new mission almost immediately. War never ended. The Inquisitor visited the underhive once more, walking the path the Pheonix had taken. He saw burned symbols, shattered altars, stains where blood had pooled. He placed his hand upon cooled rock and felt nothing lingering. He nodded once. He whispered a thanks to the Emperor. Under his breath, the words came steady and low. Then he turned and climbed back toward the light above. Months later, a rumor reached distant stars. In some forgotten tavern on a void station, a trader spoke of a world where a woman of flame fought beside the Emperor's angels. He swore he saw it with his own eyes while delivering illicit promethium. Listeners laughed, called him mad, then listened closer as he described the crimson portal and the emerald vortex. Someone asked what happened to the woman. He shrugged. She flew away, he said, into a tear in the air, as if she had better things to do. No one believed him entirely, yet the story spread. Stories mattered. They inspired hope, fear, caution. In the darkness of the galaxy, any story that did not end in despair was welcome. The Pheonix became a myth whispered in manufactoria, scrawled in graffiti, mentioned in half-remembered prayers. In a galaxy ruled by a corpse emperor and besieged by uncountable horrors, a tale of cosmic fire that burned away corruption without incinerating the faithful was as refreshing as water in the desert. On some level, perhaps, the Pheonix sensed those whispers. Perhaps she did not. She existed on scales beyond mortal comprehension. Yet the resonance of faith, even misguided, traveled through the warp, influencing realities. The Blood God added a new name to his list of foes. The Pheonix force burned brighter. The cycle continued, and so the saga moved on. The Pheonix crossed realities, leaving behind worlds altered by her passage. On each, she sought the same thing, tears in the fabric of existence that threatened to flood with corruption. She burned away disease, cauterized wounds, sometimes incinerated civilizations when no other option remained. She did so with a steady heart, a mind tempered by past mistakes, and a soul entwined with cosmic fire. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, that truth remained. Yet, in the spaces between wars, there were moments of intervention by forces no imperial doctrine could predict. The Pheonix was one such force. She did not bear the aquila upon her chest. She did not kneel before the golden throne. She did not offer prayers. Yet she fought the same enemies. She existed outside the hierarchies of men and gods. Her narrative flowed like lava, destructive and life-giving. She would return one day, perhaps, when another cult reached too far, when another portal yawned, when another Inquisitor looked to the sky and saw crimson light. Or perhaps she would never return, her path taking her forever away from this galaxy. Those who had seen her could not know. They only knew that for one day, in the depths of a hive that reeked of despair, a being of flame stepped between humanity and oblivion and chose to fight for life. The memory burned on, a small fire in the darkness, ready to flare when called upon. Through the void, the Pheonix travelled, her flames trailing across the void like a meteor's tail, her purpose as clear as ever. Rip and tear until it is done was not her creed, yet she understood the sentiment. She would rip apart portals and tear down cults until none remained. Her crusade was unending, her resolve eternal. Somewhere beyond stars, the Pheonix vanished into a vortex of light, leaving behind ashes and hope. The end of one chapter gave way to the beginning of another. The fire never died. It only changed form, waiting for the next world to need its touch. If you hunger for more tales of impossible encounters in the Dark Millennium, smash that subscribe button. And the Emperor protects those who support the channel.